Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. Today we're going to discuss a couple of strange, perhaps peculiar, maybe even haunting, true unsolved murder mysteries with a twist. These murder mysteries are amongst the most bizarre mysteries you may ever hear about. So, settle in, turn off the light, and let's jump on in. First one I'm going to tell you about happened on December 12th, 2014, when a little boy hopped off his school bus on a rural road in Economy, Pennsylvania, and as he walked along the road to go to his home, he stumbled upon something quite peculiar lying in a field. He found a severed head. The head belonged to an old woman, and through observation, it was determined that this woman was probably local, or at least from Pennsylvania, perhaps the surrounding states. However, this is far from the strangest part of this mystery. First, she didn't match the profile of any missing person, and the rest of her body was never found. So, there never was any actual proof that this woman had been murdered, even though her head was currently separated from her body. Another twist. Her head had been, in fact, professionally embalmed. So, that could very well mean that her head and her body were already dead and had been taken from a mortuary or a hospital or even a graveyard. However, no mortuary, hospital, or graveyard reported any missing bodies. Add to that investigators couldn't even tell if this had been a professional embalming process or if somebody had a particularly strange hobby. And the fact that no one came forward to identify the body lends a little credence to someone with a strange hobby. Now, as far as the description of the woman goes, part of that was a little more difficult than normal because her eyes had been replaced with something else. Now, it is not unusual for a mortuary to remove the eyes of a body which is embalmed and replace them with fake eyeballs. However, the ones in this woman's eyes were children's toys. Those little rubber balls that you can get out of any 25-cent machine or from any dentist or any doctor's office. Yes, that's what inspectors found in her eye sockets. Initially, the investigators thought that somebody could have driven down this rural road and thrown the head out of a vehicle. However, upon discovery of the fact that her eyes were rubber balls, they realized that if that had been the case, it's very likely that they would have popped out. So, did someone place the head on the side of the road? And if so, why? And where's the body? And better yet, who is this woman? Wasn't she someone's grandmother, mother, sister, child? It remains a bizarre mystery. The next case is about Jonathan Luna, who, according to the coroner, possibly committed suicide in one of the most bizarre, probably painful, ways possible. Or did he? Back in 2003, 38-year-old Jonathan Luna, who was married and had 2 children, was working as an assistant United States attorney in Baltimore, Maryland. It had been a particularly busy day for Mr. Luna. He was in the midst of a trial which involved 2 men accused of running a drug ring out of a music studio. He had spent the morning in court and had recently been fined $25 from the judge because he had shown up to court late. So, as he was worried about that happening again, he phoned the defense attorney that night, told him that he had spent all day working on this plea agreement, that he'd stayed late in the office working on it, that he was going to go home and work on it, and he would bring it back bright and early and on time the next morning. That was the last time that anyone known would speak to Mr. Luna. That night, he got into his car at 11:38 p.m. His intention was to drive back to his house, which was also in Baltimore. However, the next morning, his body was found at 5 a.m. by a man named Daniel Gelman. Daniel Gelman had arrived at his job as a driller in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Make note of that, because Pennsylvania is clearly not Massachusetts. As Daniel went about his work, he noticed off in the distance in some woods was a red light. And when another co-worker showed up to work, Daniel asked him to go out and help him investigate what the red light was. And what they discovered was that the red light was on a dashboard of a 4-door silver Honda Accord. Its front wheels were teetering on a creek, which had a 4-foot-high bank. Mr. Gelman saw that there was a splattering of blood on the front seat. Yet, there was no driver. So, while suddenly getting murdered, while you're on your way home to Baltimore, Massachusetts, and being found in Pennsylvania is strange in its own, Luna's behavior after he left his office was also strange. For one thing, he didn't drive home. He drove to Delaware, and he went to an ATM, and he pulled out $200. It was after that for some reason, he drove to Pennsylvania. On his way there, he crossed a toll road. The ticket was found in the car, and it had blood on it. To the police, that suggested that Luna was already bleeding by the time he hit the toll road. When Luna's body was discovered, it was found in a stream, face down, and he had been stabbed 36 times, and his throat was cut, eventually slicing through his carotid artery. However, his ultimate cause of death was listed as drowning. More than half of these stab wounds had happened to his neck, and there were also cuts to his hands and fingernail marks near his wrists. But most of the wounds were described as superficial and what authorities describe as hesitation cuts. Somebody attempting to cut, but then losing the nerve. Luna also had a wound to his head, which he could have suffered when he landed in the creek. Another strange thing, apparently Luna had been in such a hurry to leave his office and drive across state lines that he left his much-needed glasses on his desk. Driving from one state to another without his glasses, possibly bleeding, and getting $200 from an ATM. By the way, that $200, it was still in his car. And not only in his car, but scattered throughout the seats, as if someone had been digging around in his car trying to find something else, and they weren't interested in the money. The front seat of the car had so much blood that it dripped through the seat and onto the floorboard of the back of the car. Many people, including the local coroner's office, actually wanted the death to be reclassified as a suicide, and their literal determination of death was saying that Luna used a Swiss Army knife to stab himself over and over and over again, eventually slicing his throat and then jumping into a stream to drown. To this day, Luna's case is still open, and it has remained cold since 2003. If you or anyone you know happens to have any details about this murder/suicide, the FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for any information. Thank you for listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, click like, and don't forget that coming up very, very soon, we're going to be streaming interviews and taking calls. And if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to leave questions below, and we will answer them for you. Good night.
Hi everyone, make sure to subscribe to Exit Live and give this video a big thumbs up. And don't forget to share with all of your friends.